distraction. And there was no way McClane could know that Hans Gruber was Simon's bro. And that's what made it Die Hard with a vengeance, with Samuel Jackson. And the good cop wouldn't miss this, even though it wasn't Christmas. He didn't get any help from Alan, but only in part 3. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die as hard as we can. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower to meet with Holly. He came to get her back and to be her man, but Hans and his buddies fucked up the plan. And that's about when everything went sour at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die as hard as we can. No one dies harder than John McClane, even when his wife's stuck on a plane, about to crash into the Potomac River on the eve of Christmas. And airport security kicked him out, but John McClane is just too damn proud, and nothing could have made him not deliver, cause that's his business. And with a lot of fights and gunplay, he blew that plane up on the runway. And with a little help from Alan, Holly's plane could land. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die hard. We're gonna die as hard as we can. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. No one dies harder than John McClane.
Welcome, everyone, to Lovecraft Live. Guys, it's the episode I've been waiting for. Ash, how you doing on this beautiful Sunday night?
I'm good. How are you?
I feel like Lovecraft Country should have started with this episode, and then like episode 2 would have been, a few months ago, and then flash back to it, because this is everything that I actually wanted. As John said in the chat already, well, the horror is here. It's the first time that I thought anything was even remotely spooky, and I was there for it.
Yeah, I was the same way. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode a lot more than I did the first two. I mean, just the pacing alone in this episode I found to be really fantastic. And I thought it got kind of creepy there for a little while. I will say I am disappointed that they've yet to seem to work out the special effects yet, because the special effects I still think are fucking garbage. But other than that, I think every episode should be totally Letitia, should totally be Letitia and Ruby centric, because the two of them I find to be super, super dynamic.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us, by the way. So if this is your first time watching Lovecraft Live, it is our Twitch stream where we immediately react to the episode. If you're not about the opinions, this is probably not the right place to be, because this is just me and Ash live. We just watched the episode. It's exactly how we feel about it, and then we'll have the deep dive on Wednesday where we actually get into the topics a little bit deeper. But Ash, you're absolutely right as far as King B also messaged us and said the show like got its legs under it. It seemed like in this episode, yeah, the effects might have been a little especially
Baby head.
Voldemort. Well, I was thinking like the Voldemort head that like came up and was like, "Get out of my." It was tacky, but I think that's like I think the show is trying to tell us now. It's 3 episodes in, like this is what our effects are like take it or leave it, But yeah, Baby Head was, I don't know, it kind of had like a little bit of a train spotting, feel to it. Um, but there were so many memorable scenes in this. There's so much power in there. SF Punker, and also Shadow Time talked about how this kind of reminds them of 13 Ghosts. I think that there was a lot of that in here, and there is homage to like several different, I think, horror films and genres as we get in here. Sarah says that that she really wanted to put on a dress and go smash things. That was one big part of the episode that I really liked. Ash was just this like. It felt like with all the events that are going on right now with the political climate and stuff, to have that cathartic release like shown on screen, it was like the first time I saw Django Unchained. You're just like, fuck yeah, destroy it all, like let's fucking go.
Yeah, I mean, this is really terrible, and I don't mean for this to sound like I'm like undermining how powerful that scene was,
Yeah,
but it reminded me of like Beyonce's Lemonade, where she's wearing that yellow dress and she takes the baseball bat and starts smashing all the cars. I mean, I've always thought that's like one of the most badass
yeah,
music videos ever, and I got very much like Beyonce vibes, and I mean that in a very positive way. And I loved it, and oh my goodness, I mean the fact that like Ruby pulls up and gives her coat, and then they get on their knees and put their hands on, on the back of their heads, and like they know that they're going to be arrested. I mean,
right.
it was very moving. It's the first time since the James Baldwin voiceover that I felt any sense of like emotion from the show. Like that it really made me feel something like deeply, and
Yeah,
I did. I felt it really deeply, and I actually through the end of the episode, I actually even liked the whole. And I guys, I thought 13 Ghosts as well. I also really liked the whole 13 Ghosts, holding of the hands and chanting in Creole. Like shout out to New Orleans Voodoo. I really appreciated that scene, and I was there for all of it except for Baby Ghost Head and the big I mean, you said Voldemort head, so we'll
yeah.
go with that. Voldemort head. Other than that, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, Aaron Sun says that the "it was my first time" was like a big what the fuck to throw in there. I disagree completely, and the reason why is that I said at the beginning I was like, oh, Letitia and Atticus have this relationship it's refreshing to see on TV, that they're not lovers, that they're partners, that they're a team, that there's a kinship from their childhood, from growing up in the same neighborhood. But the way they made it all come together, I felt organic. It felt real, and I want them as a couple. And then that scene afterwards, so after the guys, also if you're watching this, you should have watched the episode because we're gonna spoilers galore. Should have said that. But afterward, when they're in the bar together, we just watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High for Shat the Movies, and you see what a first time experience could be, and then you see this, and it's like it's not that he was disgusted by her. It's not that she was innocent in giving herself, not giving herself to him, but having her first time with him in a bathroom at a party. But the idea being that, like, listen, we all grow up, and I shouldn't say all of us. I grew up, Ash, with this idea that like your first time it's got to be perfect for everyone. And every time I heard about one of my friends' first time, you're always like bummed out that it wasn't perfect. And then you realize none of us. It's never perfect. It's
Right.
always it never is. And in fact, this is probably about as close to perfect as it could get.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I think that that was actually, I think it showed some complexity to her
Yes.
character because right before that, you have the whole like 1955 Dirty Dancing scene, and she kind of carries herself like a
Hmm.
worldly woman, like she's, that she knows the world and that she's very assured of herself, including sexually, and I think in a positive way. And the fact that she admits that it also makes that rape scene last week have more context as well. The fact that she was so afraid of her first time being a rape, which was very common amongst a lot of women of color back then. I mean, a lot of them were still being raped, and so her being afraid that that was going to be her introduction to the world of sex, I think it gives a lot more context, and which is again why I wish this, like, you I think you hit the nail on the head, why I wish this had been the first episode of like the series because it was great. And of course, I'm really biased. I love a good poltergeist story and I love a good exorcism story. Like possession stories are my absolute favorite, probably because it's like a big fuck you to the way I was raised.
Yeah.
But I love them. And so this episode had all of that. And I laughed out loud when the baby ghost said, I also laughed out loud when the dude got his head cut off by the elevator, but that laugh was like a fun laugh. It was like, oh,
And that
fucking A.
effect wasn't bad. That was pretty
No, that was
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and I love the ending with like that subterranean basement and all of
Yes.
the skeletons. Like this episode was great. Baby, I can give up Baby Ghost Head. You know, the rest of it was so fantastic. I can give that up.
Holosaurus Rex said it seemed a little brief, the sex scene. Listen, when you desire somebody a whole lot, that first time sometimes can be pretty quick. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Well, I didn't think it
Partying.
was too bad. It was like it was party sex,
Yeah,
you know, it was bathroom
yeah,
party
yeah.
sex. It's not supposed to take a long time.
That's right. Samuel says the music on the series is awesome if nothing else comes out of it. I totally agree. And asks, where is there a house in Chicago with that big of yard? Couple things to say about that. So first of all, like there's a lot of 2 flats and 3 flats in Chicago that have quite a bit of yard. Secondly, I love that the house looked completely out of place in the neighborhood, right? So you had all these like Edward Scissorhands, like, nice cookie cutter, like pastel colored houses of the 50s. And then you got the Winthrop house. It's just like there, it looks, you can look at it, it's haunted. Like I think that is the vibe of the show. It's like, and when they go in there, it's all the trappings of a classic haunted house, right? There's a spooky elevator, there's spider webs, there's a basement, and then a sub basement, which, by the way, something I learned living in Ohio, sub basement's never a good idea. Always something bad going on in the sub basement.
Yeah, well, and I guess maybe it's a New Orleans thing, but like I'm used to seeing those houses and you go, "Yep, that motherfucker's haunted," but you buy it anyway because it's nice, right? Like so, it's probably, your best bet to get that nice of a house. And I don't know, I really bought it. And this is the first time there were these huge departures from the book that I appreciated. I thought the departures from the book in this episode really worked as
Yeah.
opposed to the departures in the previous episodes. And I think I don't know, and maybe this is going way out on a limb, you guys, so feel free to call me out, but I think that Misha Green being a woman of color writer, and she's got all these women of color on her writing team, they're doing such a fucking amazing job for writing for the women
Yes.
this season, and
Yes.
they should, but I don't think they are as successful writing for the men. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of usually women are the ones who get the short end of the stick, in terms of roles, but I do see this massive, issue of balance because Tick is supposed to be your leading man, and they're just not doing a good job, I don't feel, writing for he or Montrose at all.
So I'm going to counter that, Ash, actually.
Yeah.
As a guy watching this episode, one of the topics that I want to talk about on the deep dive is the layering in this episode.
Mhm.
So many times we had the layering. The way police treat people of color in Chicago versus when they're down south or in Lovecraft country. The way that the way that Ruby and Letitia relate to each other. And what I found in this episode in 2 different parts was, one is there is a bizarre Saeed Jones writes about this, the idea of being the man of the house. And when you are a younger person and the man of the house is gone, whether it's a father, an uncle, or whatever is gone, there is a bizarre void that you are somehow expected to fill by the nature of being the male in that space. And it's created, it's a construct socially, right? But it is something that exists. And I know what that feels like. And I think that they depicted that so beautifully. And I don't think everybody would pick up on it unless they've been in that position. But there's a reason why Atticus leaves the house. It's because he realizes that he is being thrust into the position of man in the house, helping with the guide, helping with the breakfast, whatever. And that Hippolyta doesn't want him there. He knows that, he feels that. And then also the relationship between Montrose and Atticus, that tension between father and son, where Atticus is much bigger, he's much more imposing. And when Montrose slams that fist down, Atticus knows that he can't challenge this man because it's his father. and King B and I talk about this all the time with his dad. And at the same time, he can't be in the same space, you know? And so it's like this. I thought that they did a beautiful job, maybe not exploring Atticus as the chief protagonist, but rather exploring like the emotional quandaries that men are put into. And I felt that throughout the episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think that I totally buy that. I think I'm more mentioning like that this was a Letty and Ruby centric episode, and the previous two have been Tick centric, and they were significantly weaker narratively. Like the standouts in the first two episodes were anything with Letitia, like or even Hippolyta,
Yeah.
like they were the standouts, and so I think they're gonna have to figure out because I don't find Tick very likable in this show. I
Okay.
don't find his character very likable. And he's fine. And he's a great actor. Jonathan Majors is
Yes.
a great actor, but I don't find him likable. And I don't find Montrose likable, which he's not supposed to be.
Right.
Right. And we lost George, who was the likable male figure. And I just think we need to like one of the male figures again, especially Tick, since he is, this massive protagonist in the story. So, but I don't necessarily think that that's like a read and like the whole series. I'm hoping they fix that. It's just I'm hoping that they can rise to the level that Letitia and Ruby and Hippolyta are putting out there. Because even just the few scenes when Hippolyta's ripping the fucking pages out of Dracula, like
Yeah.
I'm like feeling every moment of that. It just and Susan Brew, yeah, I mean, didn't start off likable. Maybe he'll grow on me for sure. For sure.
I should have mentioned at the top of this. I was just so excited to talk about the episode that there are different ways that you can support the podcast. So as we're doing Lovecraft Country, we don't make any money doing Lovecraft Country as a podcast. So if you would like to support the pod, a great way you can do that is by subscribing. So all those little toilet paper rolls you see in the chat, those are people who subscribe to the Twitch stream, which helps us out. It's a little bit of money that goes to us. So you could do that in two different ways. One is by going to Twitch Prime and using your credit card to subscribe. Thanks, Sarah, for the big cheer there. So Sarah just cheered, and that's the other way you can do it is by cheering. So you can hit that little bit icon next to your chat box and cheer for us. It's like a tip for your hosts. We don't actually pocket it like directly; it goes to the pod, but we have to pay for hosting and everything else. And then if you have Amazon Prime, you can actually pay for Twitch Prime through your Amazon Prime. It's included in Amazon Prime every month, so you get one subscription a month that you can use, and you can go ahead and do that. And then another way you could do is to donate directly. I'll put that link in there as well. And again, guys, we're not trying to like pressure you into spending any money, but if you would like to support the pod, subscribing through your Amazon Prime account is a really great way to do it that doesn't cost you anything. And then sharing is always a lot of fun because it makes us feel good. Like Aaron Son just did another 100-bit cheer. Yay. Thank you so much. And Sarah says, Sarah put her thoughts in along with her cheer. So you can do that as well. Helps us see it. Another way you can do it is there's a little bubble under your chat box, and you can use that with points to highlight your message so we can make sure that we see
Bridges.
it. Thank you, Bridges, for the cheer. So the question came up, how does this compare to the book? And something Sarah said in the chat, Ash, is that this made her forget about the book. And I think that this was, again, the first time where there was a departure from the book, as you said earlier in Lovecraft Live, where you're like, yeah, man, I'm cool with this. It's fine with me.
Yeah. The only time that I got hung up, and this is neither here nor there, but that planet mobile is supposedly like as big as the room
Yes.
in the book. And I got really distracted, like, that's fucking it. Like that's it. So I mean that part, was the only part I got hung up on. But yeah, I mean, I think that this episode, I mean, the fact that, the ghost was not the person that it was in the book, the fact that, Letty gets the ghost out the way that she does as opposed to the way that she does in the book. I really liked it. I thought it worked and was actually a lot more effective and allowed her to be a stronger character than the book did in those scenes.
So one key difference in the book is that attack on the house in the book where the guy's coming through the window with the baseball bats. They don't end up all like dying. And it was actually kind of disappointing because like one of the guys gets like trapped under the elevator and you're like, come on, like give us some blood. But I think in the book they were like, well, how do we explain that three, white dudes died in the house and what do they do with the body? So in this case it was like, oh, there's this sub level and that's where they are. And so they kind of explain it away that way. And then of course, yes, as 2 of 4 said, what happened to the statue? I wanted to see the statue. The inappropriate statue.
I always thought the statue was like silly in the book. Like, like I was like, okay, like this is going to look terrible on screen. That was one of 2 moments that I was like, Mm-mm, I don't want, and another one's coming up soon, guys. There's two moments I was nervous about, and that was one of them was seeing that statue because it could have been really like that movie, The Haunting with Catherine Zeta-Jones when the statues come to life and it's such terrible fucking special effects. Like, I
Is it
feel
worse
like
than Babyhead basketball player?
it was as bad. It was definitely as bad.
So one of the things I mentioned Ash in my notes as we talk about kind of like what stood out about this episode for me was that I had a checklist when Lovecraft Country started, and that checklist was all the things that I wanted to see, what I expected out of the show. And yes, it's not fair to have expectations, but it's kind of like my wish list, I should say, right? And on that, I wanted mystery. And I think we got that here with the piecing together of what the hell was going on. And you literally had like a gumshoe moment where they're at the bar and, and Letitia's got the stuff and she's showing
Mm.
Atticus all the pieces. And yes, it's very convenient that she had access to all that stuff. And every single missing person had a photo that she could reference back to her photos. I mean, we have to let some things go in the sense that the show's moving at a breakneck pace. Spookiness, we got that in some of the scenes where she was like looking around the house. I love that sort of classic horror movie, Sixth Sense, like, bodies in the background when people don't
Mhm.
notice them. That's always fun. We had gore, which I wanted. We had, the black characters, stepping, like getting to step up and express some of their rage, which I really, really wanted to see. And then we had like a little more connection between characters, which I really wanted. And then finally, tension. A lot of the scenes in this episode had tension, which always grips me and pulls me into the screen. I know a lot of people sometimes don't like that in entertainment, but for me, tension is always welcome.
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree. I mean, I loved the scene with the lady with like the ripped out mouth, creeping up on the
Yes.
bed. I thought that was amazing. And I thought it looked amazing too. I also like the guy with the thing through his head in the mirror right before she has sex with Tick. I mean, I thought all of that worked really well. And there was definitely some tension. There's tension between characters and there's tension between the white world and the people of color world. I mean, there it really worked this week. All of those pieces, it made sense about how this is a monster story within a monster story. With that monster story, the outer one being, the world of Jim Crow. I mean, just the scene alone in the paddy wagon when they're taking her down. I mean,
Yes.
that was such a fantastic scene. So I liked it. I mean, and one of my biggest hopes was that we would see the characters together more rather than in these segments. And they gave us that in this episode because Chick didn't disappear for 100 pages. He was
Right.
just always there. So I do agree that all worked really great.
I got to say that Jonathan Majors is one of the few actors I know who looks like less awesome in a uniform. I was like, get
Yeah,
that thing off.
I
Get
agree.
it. When he took it off, I was like,
Yeah.
all right, there we go.
Yeah.
Now Punker was asking, how does it work that ghosts are used to cleanse another ghost? I don't think they've quite figured that out yet, but I think the idea there was that they weren't able to focus their torment on a figure until that figure was raised, and then once the figure, it was Epstein, is that his name? Once
Yeah.
he was raised, then it was like, okay, they knew where to focus their rage. And as Sarah pointed out, they were healed in the process. You saw their bodies were mangled,
Mhm.
their heads were swapped around and stuff. This is the experimenting that he was doing. And then as that process went on, they were returned to their whole selves.
Yeah, and I thought that was really beautiful. I thought that was really beautiful symbolism. I will say that in terms of the deep dive this week, I'm hoping the audience there can help out because I'm not really sure what I want to be my big bucket this week because this was a pretty straightforward episode. There wasn't a lot of cultural references. There wasn't a lot of I mean, other than, the burning cross, right? I mean, like that's something obviously, but I'm thinking that for me, I want to dig in a little bit and give some background about what Christina says, kind of like our Easter egg at the end, where
Mm-hmm.
she's talking about their lineage and the invulnerability. I think that that's where I want to kind of situate myself for the deep dive is talking about what could come next without giving spoilers for those of us that have read the book because I don't think it matters at this point because it's diverted so much. But that's what I'm thinking. But I'm curious what you think, Gene, and then what everybody else out there, kind of what you're wanting to wanting us to dig into a little bit more.
So if you're asking me, the thing that I want you to dig into is what was the opening scene all about? Because I didn't know who the voice was. I didn't really piece together those words, and it's something I have to go back and watch again and really write down what was said there. But there's that church scene,
Yeah.
and I don't understand what was going on there.
I can definitely do that, and that looked like the churches I grew up in,
Okay,
so
yeah. So I need that explained for sure.
okay.
For me personally, again, I'm going to talk about the layering, and I actually did catch one very interesting cultural piece that was just in the party. I don't know if you caught it, but they're talking about Michael, who changed his name to Martin and was dating a white woman. So a lot of people don't know this, but Martin Luther King was born Michael Luther King. His or Michael King. His father was Michael King. They went to Germany, or his father went to Germany when MLK was about. And I should say, sorry, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His dad went to Germany, was so inspired by the Protestant reformist Martin Luther that he then changed his name, and then that changed Martin Luther King's name. So they're talking about him. And when he was 19 years old, he actually had a white girlfriend. And then people told him this is terrible for your career. This is terrible for your image. This will never work out in today's world. So he would have graduated the seminary, I believe, in like 1951, I think 1950, 1951. So the timing actually on this is
Wow,
quite
I didn't
good.
even pick
But
up
yeah,
on
it was
that.
a really cool little piece because as soon as they said it, I
Yeah,
was like, I remember that story, and I went back and yeah, it's true.
that's really amazing.
Yeah, and then
Wow.
all. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, go, go,
I was
go.
gonna say also Aaron's son's pointing out also those the references to different like the officer in
Yeah,
the
the
captain,
NAACP
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
basically
Mhm.
referring to the the different organizations, civil rights organizations in the pejorative.
Well, I also think because, we've been trying to do this historical piece. I think it would be interesting to look at actually what would have happened to someone like Letty if she had been arrested for this. And if Tick and them had been arrested, in that time in 1955, what would have happened to them? Because she destroyed 4 cars, like she
Yeah,
destroyed property of, white people. And they were standing out there defending her with guns. And I would be curious, if King B or if you would, dive into that because I think that's really important for us to continue to orient ourselves within this world in terms of like the actual consequences that they are trying to educate us
right.
about. I think is actually really really interesting. So, and we've got a request here too. If War also wants to know what King B's thoughts are, so I'm sure his thoughts will be on the deep dive tomorrow. We don't know.
Yeah,
So
he did message us as I mentioned before and saying this he felt like this was the first episode that really had its like legs under it. So I think that he's a fan of
yeah.
the episode as well. And Shadow Time says that there's that uncomfortable moment when Letitia's sister, so Ruby, says that if more people of color worked harder, that they could get
Mm,
further. Now it's
mhm.
very interesting because we did say in the preview to the series that there was going to be a lot of the current conversation injected into Lovecraft Country, and you definitely see that here, where it is a differing point of view
Yeah.
within the minority community, which is basically saying like maybe it's about self determination, and maybe if I worked harder, I would get that job at Marshall Fields. Yes, I acknowledge that I am being a victim of prejudice here in the sense that it's hard for me to get it, but that just means I have to go the extra mile to make that happen for myself.
Yeah, and Mark 7, yeah, I mean, obviously she was, imbued with the power of the Holy Spirit, but I think what Gene is talking about, what I think is interesting is this juxtaposition because the episode's called Holy Ghost, and so this juxtaposition of like the Holy Ghost, like, infiltrating, some of our characters and then going from there and looking at like legitimate ghosts and then also digging into why Letitia's response is the way she is. Is it because she doesn't feel anything? Which interestingly enough, I talked about on the Shat the Movies episode of
Mhm.
Fletch Lives about how difficult it is when you're like the one person not feeling anything in a spirit-filled church.
Yeah.
I think that that's really interesting. So we're definitely Coach Marcus going to dig into that.
And Coach Marcus, by the way, thanks for joining us. I'm always so excited when the Twitter world and
I
the
know.
Shat the Movies world and the Shat on TV world and the
We
Twitch world
are
all come
recording.
together. Thanks, John. John just gifted a subscription to Coach Marcus. So what John just did there is he spent his own money to buy a subscription to our Twitch feed to Coach Marcus for the month. And John is amazing at doing this. We love you for it. And so basically now, Coach Marcus, you can use all the subscriber emotes. So you can do the Gene, the Ash, the Big D, like that. And then also you get to skip ads and get all sorts of little perks like that. If we were to set the chat to subscribers only, you could get in there too. But why would we do that?
Well, and Mimi, I agree. Coach Marcus, I'm gonna have to take a little bit of a dive into that, but I thought that was Ruby, not Hippolyta. But we will check it out.
Yes says, don't let John know he's amazing. He will become insufferable.
Too late, all yes. Too late.
So some of the other topics for me at least, Ash, as people are kind of putting their requests in as well, is really the look at some other hints about Atticus that we got. So he did talk about, we're getting, I think that there's this big mystery that's going to pan out over the entire season of 10 episodes where we find out about Tick's past. Now, what's interesting about that is in the book, they really don't address that. And so there is something that happened in Korea, and we get a hint here about like how he said they used excessive heat, and noise to, basically as an instrument of torture here. But like, I do love that they added this little mystery on the side. I'm always a sucker for mysteries. And so I think like every episode we're going to get just a little piece more of that.
Little taste.
Little taste. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this might not make it in the deep dive, but it's something we can even discuss now, is I don't know how you felt about this, but I felt like on the TV show, as we discussed the comparison to the book, so much more focus on characters' motivation. Like in the book, characters did things and you're like, why? Why are you doing this? And in the show, you really get to see Ruby's motivation. You get to see Letitia's, definitely her motivation, and also, Atticus as well. You actually see an explanation as to why somebody would do something, as opposed to just like in the book, it was very much just taken as an act of faith that like this person did it because.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's really important. And I think by the end can really make this a lot more enjoyable than the book itself, because we'll have those missing pieces. Because that was the big thing I think about the book that was a letdown for me, is it was kind of like, wah, 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 it's over. Like, it didn't really feel like um much. I mean, spoiler alert, it's my same problem I have with Fast Times at Ridgemount High. It feels like a whole lot of information and not a whole lot of closure, right?
Right.
And so I think that the show can hopefully fix that.
Yeah. Well, lots of stuff to discuss on the deep dive. So again, just so you guys know the schedule for this week, this was Lovecraft Live, so we'll be wrapping this up. On Wednesday, you can expect the deep dive to come out. On Tuesday, before that, will be Shat the Movies will come out. So Big D is working on Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, so that'll be out on Tuesday. And as well, you've got Getting By with the King Bee on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we're going to be playing Fortnite on Squad Goals, so that should be a lot of fun. So if you have gotten Fortnite off of your machines, get it back on. Come play with us. It is cross-platform. I built a little Shat island that we can play on, so it'll be a private game just for Shat players. Again, if you're not a gamer, you can always join us on Twitch and just watch. We're right here at shatontv.com/Twitch. And then on Thursday, we will be recording Fast Times at Ridgemont High with Big D. And then on Friday, join us back here for the big cocktail party Shappy Hour. So lots going on. And then, of course, we'll be back next week for another Lovecraft Live. So, Coach Marcus, I thought you were a fuck up, but you're just fucked up. I love that line as well. And listen, we've talked Letitia this whole time on the show. And fuck, dude, Ruby is a fantastic character, which I think, again, upgrade from the book. Like, they really knocked it out of the park with her. She is fantastic.
Agreed. I can't wait to see some of the stuff that happens in the book with this person playing her. So,
but I think that the end message, at least for me, Ash, and thanks Bridges for the cheer. For me, it's if we can get another 7 episodes like this, I think that this show is an absolute winner. I would love to see more of this. And as you saw, guys, this is a new chapter in the book, a new story, right? So we kind of bookends on Artem, and now we are in Chicago with the house. And honestly, I think a little more of the house will be fine, and more of the goings on in Chicago, if they have this similar tonality, would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I'm excited, guys.
Rehoboam.
Thanks, Aaron, for the cheer.
Aaron.
All right, guys. So we're gonna call it a night tonight. Get our research done. Ash and I and the King Beal are recording tomorrow, and then we'll have that out for you on Wednesday. So stick around if you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Go subscribe right now, so you can get it anywhere you get your podcasts, or just go to shoutontv.com and you can find all the ways to subscribe there. Ash, thanks so much for spending another Sunday night with me. It's good to be back and recording with you.
And I didn't have to do this by myself.
Oh no, this is. Oh, I should say that, by the way, guys. Just as a point, like Sarah and I were talking about this weekend, is that there's a lot of sacrifice that we have to make to do these things. So tonight there was a march in Phoenix, and I wasn't able to make it because Lovecraft Country is on at 6, which is usually when the marches are in Phoenix. And so just so you guys know, we are staying very active with Black Lives Matter, and also showing our support in lots of different ways, whether it's financial contributions or actually actively marching. But I do encourage everyone to, in addition to watching Lovecraft Country, get educated, get involved, and get out there and really, really support the movement.
And it's okay, Sarah. Everybody needs a break. I understand. It was just, I was by myself, talking to myself, rambling on for 30 minutes.
I thought it was a great episode. I'd listen to you ramble for 30 minutes anytime.
Well, that's because you like me. There's some people out there maybe who don't, but I'm glad you're back. So.
All right, guys. Well, it's been great. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week, everybody. And you'll hear from us on Wednesday.
We love you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower to meet with Holly. He came to get her back and to be her man, but Hans and his buddies fucked up the plan, and that's about when everything went sour at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die as hard as we can. No one dies harder than John McClane, even when his wife's stuck on a plane, about to crash into the Potomac River on the eve of Christmas. And airport security kicked him out, but John McClane is just too damn proud, and nothing could have made him not deliver, cause that's his business. And with a lot of fights and gunplay, he blew that plane up on the runway. And with a little help from Alan, Holly's plane could land. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die as hard as we can. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. No one dies harder than John McClane, saving all the passengers on the train. When Simon wasn't clear with his intentions, it was just a distraction. And there was no way McClane could know that Hans Gruber was Simon's bro. And that's what made it Die Hard with a vengeance, with Samuel Jackson. And the good cop wouldn't miss this, even though it wasn't Christmas. He didn't get any help from Alan, but only in part 3. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. John McClane. Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower to meet with Holly. He came to get her back and to be her man, but Hans and his buddies fucked up the plan, and that's about when everything went sour at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellie.